Hey everyone, Andrea Walford here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create this butterfly thanks card. Now this card demonstrates how to create a masked and sponged ombre background, as well as how to create a sponged gradient for your die cut pieces. So I have here a 4.5 by 5-inch piece of Whisper White cardstock, and I've secured it to my grid paper with just a little bit of low tack adhesive. Then I'm going to use the largest of my Thinlits butterflies. You can see there's 3 different butterflies that come in this set. Now I want to get a general view of where the center of this is, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some sponging on this cardstock piece, and then I'm going to die cut my butterfly from there. Now I'm going to sponge in 3 different colors. I've got Melon Mambo, Pumpkin Pie, and Crushed Curry Classic Ink. So I'm going to start with my darkest color, and that's going to be at the center of my cardstock. So I'm going to take my sponge dauber, and I'm just going to dab it off, and then just start very lightly sponging the center area of my cardstock piece. And I'm not applying a lot of downward pressure. What I'm trying to do is just kind of gradually and softly build up layers. So you can see I've started in the center and I'm working in a circular motion. Now once you have your first layer of color applied, what we want to do is to see how much space this is going to take up. So I think that's probably about good. So I'm going to set my Melon Mambo aside, and I'm going to grab my Pumpkin Pie and a clean sponge dauber. So now I'm going to dab in there, and then I'm not applying much pressure because I don't want to end up with weird marks. I'm going to start my sponging around the pink. So what we're trying to do is build color. Now it's a little bit trickier when you're working with sponge daubers because the area is kind of small, so you're more likely to end up with, you know, the defined circular impression. But we're just trying to work, that's why I'm kind of trying to work slowly, not applying huge amounts of pressure. Now even if there are variations in color, I don't think it's going to show up too badly or too much on the die. And one of the things you may notice as I'm building up my next layer of color is that I am kind of overlapping the pink a little bit to blend the color in. So now let's take a look with our butterfly. That's looking good. So now we're going to put away our pumpkin pie, and I'm going to take the crushed curry and a clean sponge dauber, and now I'm going to start building my outer layer. So the very last ring, and I'm really using a large, broad, sweeping motion with my arms. Now what you can do, so when we get down to this last step here, I think what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to grab one of my Stampin' sponges just to get a little bit more coverage near the outside. So I'll be back. Okay, so I have my Stampin' sponge and I'm kind of squishing it up, dabbing it in my crushed curry, and then I'm using that to build up my color. And then I think I'm going to come back with a little bit more of my pumpkin pie and I'm going to dab. I'm using the same sponge. Blend some of that, and I'm going to bring it all the way into the center. So now let's just see here. Okay, so we want actually some more of the crushed curry towards the outside. So you can see we're building kind of this concentric circle of sponging. I'm going to bring some more of my pumpkin pie. Let's see how that looks. And I actually think I'm going to bring out a little bit of pink, and I'm more Melon Mambo. So I'm going to use the side of my sponge. And bring that out a little bit to overlap. So you can see really you're kind of playing with color, you're playing with the layers. You just want to make sure that everything's covered. The reason I'm not speeding up through this, because sometimes what I will do is I will speed up in my videos, but I kind of wanted to show you how long it's going to take you to build up the layers of color. So it's not necessarily like a 1-2 thing. Okay, so I think we've probably got this covered, so that's good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to center, actually I'm going to take a piece of wax paper and I'm going to place it on top of this, then I'm going to sandwich it in between here. You know what, maybe I'll grab that and I'll show you so you can see what that looks like. So now this is just normal Reynolds wax paper. It doesn't have to be the Reynolds brand. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer that on top of my cardstock piece. Then I'm going to take my butterfly and I'm going to center it on there and run it through my Big Shot. The reason I'm doing this is when you have intricate die cut pieces, the wax paper will help keep the paper from sticking in the die. It'll help it pop right out. So I'm going to take this and run it through my Big Shot and I'll be back. So I'm back from my Big Shot. Now I'm just going to take my paper piercing tool, and you can see I just popped it out through the hole. Now look at how easily this is lifting from my die. Now when you look at this, you will actually see the layer of wax paper on top, and if you pull it off, look at that absolutely stunning butterfly. So I have here a 4 by 5 1/4 inch piece of Whisper White cardstock, and I have it well secured to my grid paper using a temporary removable adhesive. Now I'm going to take some of these post-it notes and I'm going to create a 1/2 inch border, or I'm going to mask off the half inches all around the 4 sides. So I'm using the lines of my grid paper to help me. And it is, because this only is a post-it on, not on all the sides, I'm using, like it's posted just along the top, I'm going to use a little bit of my painter's tape here to help me. Now for my bottom, I'm going to have to mark off, so this is going to be approximately there. Let me just double check if I'm looking at the bottom. I think that looks about right. Let's do. It's a little bit tricky when you're doing it this way because I don't have my grid lines as reference. Okay. So now, because I don't want this to go anywhere, I'm going to use some painter's tape just to help hold the edges down, like so. So now I've chosen 2 different colors of ink. I have Bermuda Bay and I have Pool Party. I'm going to start with my Pool Party, the lightest color, and I'm going to work from the top to the bottom. So I'm going to start by pouncing on my Pool Party pad and then very lightly sponging in a circular motion downwards. So I'm starting at the top, bringing the color downwards. I don't want very much at the top. I want it to start to get darker as the color moves downwards. Now another way you could do this, rather than sponging as I'm doing, is you could brayer. And we do have a whole series of videos in the online classes section that show you how to brayer backgrounds. So then once I get to this point now, I'm going to bring in some Bermuda Bay. I'm going to pounce it, and this time I'm going to bring it from the bottom up. So what I'm trying to do is to create almost like a bit of an ombre effect. So kind of like we did when we had sponged the butterfly, that concentric area, you want to kind of slowly start to build up the layers of color. So now I'm going to pull this upwards a little bit. Now with sponging, you're not, especially with these kind of sponges, the Stampin' sponges, you're not going to create a super smooth blend. You can see this, it's not like it's a little bit patchy, but I kind of like that for this particular project because it does look a bit more sky-like than if it was a solid color. So I think I'm going to turn this onto its side and grab a little bit of the Pool Party and then just bring that a little bit down. Just want to make sure that the edges are nice and defined, like so. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove my mask. And you can see that when I do that, we have this nice, crisp, border of white with this little bit of a gradient background. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this really pretty scripty thanks and I'm going to stamp it along the bottom right of this window masked sky that I created. So there you can see how that now looks. And I'm just going to give the ink a moment to dry. So I stuck my panel onto my card base using some Stampin' Dimensionals, and you can see here what that looks like. I put 9 dimensionals just in 3 rows of 3. And my base, card base is a standard A2 size card I created out of a 4 1/4 by 11 inch piece of Whisper White cardstock. I then took my butterfly and I just cut little strips and pieces of Stampin' Dimensionals, and then I just placed it in several areas of my butterfly, removed the backing, and then I'm sticking my butterfly onto my card on an angle like so. And my final step was to apply a few of my Jewels Basic Rhinestones, just a couple little clusters above and below the butterfly. So there you can see what our card looks like, and it's now finished. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial, and I look forward to creating with you again. See ya!